Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Welcome back to GES Indonesia Digital Series, a series of activities from GES Indonesia 2020 event. My name is Farah Karima as your MC. I'm present with me today as a speaker, Mr. John Gwyn Jones, MBE. Chief Executive Officer, Federation of British International Schools in Asia. John retired as principal at the end of 2013 or 2014 academic year. After dedicating 23 plus year long and loyal years of service to St. Christopher International School, Penang. Then he took on new leadership or consultancy position as a Director of Development and Managing Director of Penyatip International Group of Schools in Laos, where he supported the development of 5 campuses. John is also now fully committed to utilizing the wealth of his experience and knowledge in supporting the development of international schools in the region. He remains ambitious in taking full advantage of the huge network that he has acquired in supporting the creation of schools that will offer a teaching and learning environment that will bring out the best in the students and equip them with the skills and knowledge that will prepare them for the challenges in the future. In August 2019, John was appointed the Chief Executive Officer of the Federation of British International Schools in Asia, or you can call it FOBISIA, which has a membership of nearly 80 premier British schools in 16 countries throughout Asia. And in December 2019, John was awarded an MBE by Her Majesty the Queen in her 2020 New Year's Honours List for his services to British education overseas. And today, John will be presenting Plan and Design an Outstanding International Primary School from scratch, looking at pedagogy, a creative curriculum, the facilities, the experienced staff, and the leadership. And now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to John.
Thank you very much, Farah. I feel quite embarrassed by all those accolades that you gave me, but can I say what a pleasure it is to participate in the GES Indonesia conference. Selamat siang. Good afternoon, everyone. Or in Lao, we say Sabai Dibo. Saya penduduk Pulau Pinang 35 tahun. I lived in Malaysia for 35 years. And currently I'm here in Laos. And as you heard, my role at the moment is CEO of the Federation of British International Schools in Asia, supporting schools across 16 countries and close to 80 British international schools. So in that time, I have built a wealth of experience in terms of leadership and management of schools, and more appropriately to this presentation, about setting up a new school from scratch. So I will share that experience with you, and hopefully some of you may find that useful, and I'd be more than happy to continue this conversation with any of you in the future. I prepared a presentation, and I will share that with you on the screen here so that you can see what the topics are. So this is my title, as you see, Plan and Design an Outstanding International Primary School from Scratch. What's interesting in Indonesia, as part of FOBISIA, we do have a school in Jakarta, the British School Jakarta. And previously it was known as the British International School. But Indonesia rules now, you're not allowed to use the term international. So that's something that perhaps you need to be aware of in terms of the rules in Indonesia. Of course, I have had also a wonderful experience in Indonesia in developing a new school from scratch in Medan, which is literally across the causeway from Penang. And, I'll share that experience that I thoroughly enjoyed in setting up initially an international school in Medan. So this is my topic, and I will go through each slide with you as we go along. So first of all, these will be the headings that I will share with you. looking at initially doing a feasibility study, which is more or less doing your homework before you start the project. And then the type of school and the phases of learning that you hope to design and develop. Of course, the critical aspect is the designing and including all the necessary facilities. And then as far as learning is concerned, providing a curriculum that's relevant to the type of school you want to develop. Staffing a school, making sure you have all the leadership and the teachers in place. And critically, of course, to support the development of the school is the marketing. And finally, if you've done all that correctly, you would be ready then for the opening of your school. So those are the areas that I will touch on. So we move first to the feasibility study. I think this is quite critical, in terms of asking yourself, why am I building this school? What is the motivation? Some people in the past have built schools because of their own children. They have children in other schools that they're not happy with. As we saw here in Laos, the owner of the school I worked in Laos developed a school because her daughter wasn't happy with the school where she was. So she decided to bite the bullet and say, right, I'll start my own school. Other reasons may be like an investment, because, in education now, being part of schools is quite a good investment. So you do need to ask yourself, what is the motivation? And if all those tick the boxes, then you're ready to go. Of course, in doing that, you need to decide where your school is going to be located. To me, this is quite critical. Location, location, location. And where shall I locate my school in terms of the catchment area, where the potential families and the students will come from. And possibly more importantly as well, is to be in an area where there may not be any competition. I've seen schools that haven't done a good feasibility setup, where literally about 500 meters away, there's a competitor. So you're both fighting for the same market. So location is quite important. Then you need to identify, right, what's the need in this location? What's the demand? Is there a growing young population with young families, middle class, if it's going to be a fee-paying school? So at least, you will have a school that will have a steady sort of increase of enrollment. And as I shared with you just now, being aware of the competition. What will make your school different? If there are choices of schools, then you need to look at features that will make your school stand out. So being very aware of other schools that may want the same market as you is quite important as part of the feasibility study. And then, of course, the budget. What's it going to cost you? It's not cheap to build a school. I know that from my own experience, apart from the land, which, there are different models with this. You can have a developer that might put up a new housing development and want a school to be part of that. So the developer may build the school for you and then you lease the premises. However, if you are funding the development, it's quite important to be aware as to what the costs will be. And then, in terms of committing yourself to building a school and the cost of that, you have to be very patient with your return of investment. Because, on average, it will take about 5 to 10 years before you get your return of investment. And once you've made that commitment, then you set up a structure that has governance, a board, an executive board, an advisory board, that then will support the school through each phase of its learning. So I cannot emphasize strongly the importance of doing a feasibility study before you venture into anything. And then, of course, we look at then, the topic here today is on primary schools. So the next slide then will share with you what the different phases of learning are in terms of primary education. The the first choice you have to make is what system will you want in terms of your school? British seems to be the most popular in terms of international education, and research reflects this. But you have US systems, you have international schools that use various curricula, and then a bilingual model, which perhaps for Indonesia might be more suitable, where you have a combination of the local national curriculum and the teaching through the medium of that language, Bahasa Indonesia. And then you have an international curriculum where the medium of instruction is English. So, you know, these are key decisions you need to make. And of course, that would come out of your feasibility study as well. A lot of my experience are in the British system. So in terms of primary education, you look at possibly 3 phases within that school. The first one would be the early years, where you would have students or children from the age of 1 up to 5 years of age. Of course, the 1-year-olds would still be napkins probably, and they'd have their afternoon nap, but they would be considered like your toddlers. And what's popular in this kind of model these days is having like a mother and toddler group in terms of feeding into your school. So I think that age group is quite important as your feeder. So that would be known as the early years, and then you'd move then into more of the formal side of learning in the primary according to the British system, where you'd have 2 different key stages. Key stage 1 would be students from 5 to 7, which would incorporate year 1 and year 2. And then key stage 2 would be the 7 to 10-year-olds, which would be year 3s to year 6. So that would be the kind of system that experience I've had in developing a British type primary school. Of course, in developing a primary school, you have to be very conscious of what's after primary, and whether that's something that you would cater for, or you become a feeder for another secondary school. So always bear that in mind, that if you are developing a primary campus, do you have room to extend it up into secondary, which would be a different challenge? Or would you have a secondary on a separate campus? Or is there a secondary that you can feed into? So always be conscious of that in terms of what's after your primary years in your primary campus. Okay, and then of course the next slide then would be to look at the design and the facilities. This is a critical aspect in developing any school, really. Before you do this, I would strongly recommend that you do some research. The research then would involve visiting other schools, not necessarily in your location. That would help, because if you did visit schools on your doorstep, you'd get to see what the competition is like. However, you know, to visit schools in different locations, in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Thailand, in Laos. So by visiting schools then, you get to see the kind of campus they have and the facilities they've got in terms of supporting you as to what you want yours to look like. You need to engage an experienced architect. Preferably somebody that has experience of, you know, designing a school, an international school, so that, you know, they are aware of what is expected. Looking at local government, you know, there are sometimes restrictions or laws or rules as to how you design a school, in terms of space, the number of students in the class, how big the class is. So you need to check on what the requirement from your local education department or the Ministry of Education. And I can't recommend highly enough about space, you know. Recently I did a visit of 2 schools, one in Hong Kong and one in Tokyo in Japan. And, one of the challenges for schools in areas like that is the limitation of space. So if you have the possibility of having enough space for your school, then please take that, because it will make a world of difference. And then the teaching environment, the physical size of your rooms to accommodate the maximum number of students, which in an international context would vary between 20 and 25 per class, to make sure that it is also fairly spacious. And finally, facilities, in terms of supporting the learning. So, what you have for play for early years, the sports facilities for all your students in terms of playing fields, swimming pool, I would strongly recommend that, because that puts you well ahead. Other, facilities such as an auditorium or a hall, art, music, science. And again, you'd get a taste of these if you visited other schools. So you would get some good ideas if you took that approach. So design facilities. It's too late after you built it to say, oh, I wish we put a swimming pool in. Too late. So do that at the early stages. Then moving along onto the curriculum. Again, similar to the type of school you want, you would then model your curriculum on that system. And there are so many curriculum models available to you, particularly for primary. You've got the International Baccalaureate, PYP, you've got the International Primary Curriculum and the Early Years International Curriculum. You have the Birth to 3 from the UK. And then you've got the English National Curriculum, which is very popular in a lot of British-type international schools. So identifying the curriculum model that would suit the kind of school you want and the students. Of course, if you're looking at a bilingual model, then you would also have to look at, the local system, National Plus, in terms of Bahasa Indonesia, and many of your parents that may not have fluency in English would perhaps prefer to have a bilingual curriculum. Of course, the curriculum then would be tailored for each phase of the learning. So you have the early years, the primary, and then other aspects in looking at the design of your curriculum would be importantly looking at safeguarding. This is quite critical now in any school, not just international, but local schools as well. And child protection, making sure all the teachers are fully trained to international expectations. And of course, one of the challenges in a lot of schools these days is students' well-being, because children being happy in school, then they will learn much better. And of course, since the COVID-19, everybody's adapted to online learning. So like today in your conference, having an online platform so that, if there's a lockdown, if students can't come to school, the learning doesn't stop. And that would give you an edge, particularly against your competitors. So that's what my advice would be in designing the curriculum. And of course, then we move along to the most important resource that you would have, and that would be your staffing. So selecting your leadership initially to ensure you've got a strong principal, head of school, supported by a leadership team. And then, of course, ensuring all your teachers are qualified and experienced. And that could be a combination of local and international teachers, because they both would learn a lot from each other. I think that blend, my experience in Malaysia and here in Laos, we have a combination of both local and international. And I think that is quite a good hybrid to have in your schools. Then, of course, teaching assistants, particularly with the younger students, would be quite critical, so that there's additional adults to help the younger ones in terms of their development. And then support teachers for other aspects of the curriculum, such as a sports teacher, PE teacher, a music teacher. And I always feel it's good in any school to have a special needs teacher to support children that either have learning difficulties or are quite gifted and talented, so they can be extended in terms of their needs. And in addition to that, then you have the administration, which will comply of your HR managers, team, marketing, and probably the critical one is your operational team that will maintain your campus. And once you've established your staffing, then is to structure an organizational chart. So everybody knows where they fit in terms of the staffing structure of your school. And that would include the governance as well. So staffing, get it right, otherwise you'll have problems along the way. And then, of course, marketing. Marketing starts well before you open your school. I've seen different models of this, where schools, a year in advance of setting up, have an office available for parents to come, gather information, even register their students. So having a pre-opening launch in terms of announcing your school is coming, and then having an office quite visual, again, location, in a good place where people can come and hear more about your school. That's quite critical in terms of the number of students that you will open with. Having good people do your marketing that have got experience in marketing, giving them incentives, so if for example, in your first year, you target 200 students, 400 students, and the marketing department achieve that, then you reward them accordingly. Making sure the literature you have about your school is in place, so all the promotional materials are all there available for parents to take with them. And then how you manage inquiries. When someone comes and register, then it doesn't stop there. Your marketing will follow up, will call them, will persevere until maybe you don't get them or you've got them in the bag. So inquiries are very important. And then, to be professional, the code of conduct, in terms of how you behave as a school. So you don't poach students from other schools or teachers from other schools. I think that's quite critical. And after you've done all your marketing, then sustaining that, it doesn't stop once the school opens. The school here in Laos has been open nearly 20 years, and we have a very strong marketing department, and that's quite critical, because the marketing department will continue to promote your school. So this department is quite critical in terms of your sustainability. And of course, then we look at the opening, when suddenly after your feasibility study, your design, the curriculum model, you've appointed your teachers, your marketing has been fantastic in getting a good start for your school as far as students is concerned, then you have to open. And, the opening should be a big splash, it should be promoted in terms of media, newspapers, TV, looking at who you'd invite to come and open your school. So, you have VIPs, those could be local politicians, Ministry of Education, key investors in the school, and of course the guests. Along with that, of course, you'd have all your parents. So this is a great opportunity for you to blow your own trumpet and announce to the world, we're here, and we are going to be one of the best schools in X or Y. So the opening is quite critical. Of course, with the opening, it needs a lot of planning, so you need to develop a program as to what kind of day you will have on that opening. So, you'd have whatever students you've got, maybe come and perform. You'd have a tour of your campus. So this is the best opportunity for you then to show off your school to all the guests, the parents, people that are curious about your school. And making sure you have the right people to do the tours, so that would be a combination marketing, as well as your academic staff, the teachers, the leadership, escorting groups of parents around the campuses so that everybody gets to see what a wonderful school that you've got. And then, of course, continue then to keep your registrations open. When you do your opening, there will be a lot of people just coming along, quite curious as to who you are, what you're about. And of course, as soon as they see your campus and your facilities and your school, hopefully they will say, right, where do I sign up? So to being prepared that during the opening to have a team ready to take new registrations so that you are ready for that. And then, of course, after the opening, then you would do surveys. You keep the data of everybody that attended. That's quite important. A register of all those participants. And after the opening, then your marketing team would survey them to get some feedback as to what they thought of your school and the opening itself, and how they would then become your ambassadors, in terms of spreading the word in your community about what a wonderful school you are. So I think I've come, not bad, I have about 2 minutes left. I hope this presentation has allowed you to get a taste of the challenges that are ahead of you if you consider opening a new school. Both in Indonesia and in Laos, I've had experience of opening several schools. As you heard from Farah, in Laos we have 5 campuses. So we open 3 new campuses. I hope that has been helpful to whoever's been listening, and I'd be more than happy to answer any future questions anybody may have.
Thank you very much, John. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we hope everyone enjoyed this amazing presentation. And besides our live stream session, there are also on-demand sessions that you can access for 2 days, 4 and 5 November 2020. You can also visit our virtual exhibition through the Meet Our Exhibitor feature in the menu on the left of the screen. To get a complete information, please contact us at marketing@tarsus.co.id. Thank you for joining us today. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and best wishes for all of us.
Thank you very much. Terima kasih.